Today we're going to be talking about my most anticipated thriller and horror book releases for the spring of 2023. Today we're going to be talking about books that are coming out in April, May, and June, since that pretty much covers spring, since spring ends on June 20th. Most of these books are going to fall pretty easily into either horror or thriller categories, but there's also some in here that are mystery books. There's some that are labeled fantasy, but they have horror elements. There's maybe even some sci-fi-y things. So a little bit of flexing outside of the genres a little bit, but for the most part, these books are going to be ones to look out for if you like to read spooky books like I do. First up is a book that I've talked about a couple of times, and it's called The Marigold by Andrew F. Sullivan. This is coming out on April 18th, and I've talked about this a couple of times because I do have an advanced copy of this via NetGalley. So I am planning on reading this one this month in March before it is released. So hopefully I'll be able to talk about it in my March wrap-up to let you guys know what I think about it and if it's worth putting on your radars or not. But from everything I've heard about it so far in the synopsis, it looks really interesting. This is one of those books that blends a little bit. It's mainly classified as a horror book, but it also has sci-fi as a categorization on it as well. This is a story that is set in the near future Toronto in the midst of environmental chaos. There is this building, the Marigold, which is this big old condo tower. And this is a story where there is a mold issue that has kind of taken down the world. There's toxic mold infesting the city's infrastructure, rotting from within, following a couple different POVs, I believe, throughout the story. And it says it has body horror, urban dystopia, and eco-fiction. All of those things sound really interesting to me, so I'm really looking forward to this one. Next up, coming out in April, is The Soulmate by Sally Hepworth. I believe this was originally published in the UK, and this is its US release date, but I've actually already read this one because it was a early release with Book of the Month, and I really enjoyed this one. It ended up being a 4-star for me. I have a reading blog where I read this one in, so if you want to see my full thoughts and experience with it, you can go check that out, but I would say that I definitely recommend picking this one up. This is a story about this couple who are living at this house where there's a cliff nearby, and oftentimes people will come to the cliff to try to take their own lives, but the husband who lives at the house will go out there to talk to those people, try to spark some hope in them, get them to walk back from the cliff and not take their own lives. However, one day there's a situation that happens where there's a woman out there getting ready to take her life, and the wife sends the husband out there like, oh, there's a lady, go talk to her, you know, you always go talk to these people. And she does end up jumping off the cliff, but did she jump? Question mark is the question that you're trying to answer, because it turns out the husband did know this woman, and it looks a little bit suspicious. Sally Hepworth's books are a little bit more of what I call like a literary suspense. They are not super fast-paced, twisty thrillers like in the way you might expect it to be. I feel like if you go in thinking it's going to be a thriller, you'll be a little disappointed and bored. So I usually just tell people to go in like it's going to be a literary suspense, and I think they'll have a good time. Next up, coming out on April 18th, is The Haunting of Alejandra by V. Castro. This is another book that I have an arc of, so you've probably heard me talk about it before. This is a story that is about the Mexican folk demon La Llorona, who is haunting this woman named Alejandra. She is starting to see this ghost. She's going through a lot of issues in her own life, and she's trying to summon her strength to be able to banish this ghost forever. I've never read from V. Castro before, so I'm not sure what to expect, but I love the cover. It sounds interesting, and I'm excited to give it a chance. Next up is a speculative mystery thriller that is coming out on April 4th, and that is called Blind Spots by Thomas Mullen. This is said to be a riveting crime novel with a speculative edge about the ways our perceptions of reality can be manipulated. The description of this book kind of reminds me of Lock-In by John Scalzi, which I read last year, in that it is a mystery crime novel set in a dystopian type of world where this weird illness has affected people. In this story, 7 years ago, everyone in the world went blind in a matter of months. Technology has helped people adjust to the new normal, creating a device that approximates vision, downloading visual data directly to people's brains. But what happens when someone finds a way to hack it and change what people see? A scientist is murdered, and the only witness insists that the killer was blacked out of her vision. And you're following homicide detective Mark Owens, who is trying to crack the case. So this does really sound super similar to Lock-In by John Scalzi, which I did enjoy. So I'm interested in this one. It is not at the very tippy top of my radar because crime novels are usually not my go-to that I pick up, but it's something that I'm keeping an eye out for that I might pick up if I have time. Next is a book I am super excited for, and that is This Delicious Death by Kayla Cottingham, which is coming out on April 25th. I previously read My Dearest Darkest from Kayla Cottingham, and I really enjoyed that one, so I'm really looking forward to a follow-up from her. This is a standalone sapphic horror novel that is said to be good for fans of Jennifer's Body, which that's me. It says 4 best friends, 1 music festival, and a cooler filled with human organs. This summer is about to get gory. This one just sounds so weird. There's so much going on in the description, but it says that 3 years ago, the melting of Arctic permafrost released a pathogen of unknown origin into the atmosphere, causing a small percentage of people to undergo a transformation that became known as the hollowing. Those impacted slowly became intolerant to normal food and were only able to gain sustenance by consuming the flesh of other human beings. Those who went without flesh quickly became feral, turning on their friends and family. However, scientists were able to create a synthetic version of human meat that would satisfy the hunger of those impacted by the hollowing. As a result, humanity slowly began to return to normal, albeit with lasting fear and distrust for the people they'd pejoratively dubbed ghouls. So you're following a couple ghouls who are living in Southern California named Zoe, Celeste, Valeria, and Jasmine, and they are deciding to attend a music festival in the desert, and they're coming with a cooler filled with hard seltzers and sin flesh, which is this synthetic human flesh, and they are ready to party. But on the first night of the festival, Val goes feral and ends up killing and eating a boy. As other festival guests start disappearing around them, the girls soon discover someone is drugging ghouls and making them feral, and they can't figure out how to stop it, and soon no one at the festival is safe. This also kind of reminds me of the shows iZombie or Santa Clarita Diet, and it just sounds like a lot of fun. Next is a book that I have some thoughts about. It's called We Love to Entertain by Sarah Strohmeyer, and I believe this is a debut psychological thriller from this author. It's coming out on April 25th, and the reason I have thoughts about this is I had an arc of this one, and I started to read it, and I DNF'd it. I really didn't like the writing style of this one, but I'll still tell you about it, and if it sounds interesting to you, maybe you'll want to pick it up. The description of this one kind of confused me when I read it, so I'll just tell you about it, how I remember what the book was about. There is this reality home renovation competition show going on, and it's called To the Manor Build, which I think is a really bad name for a show. I had never really understood why the show was named that. Kind of a weird phrase. It doesn't really like come off the tongue well, but there's a show going on. It's a competition show, and these different people around the world are renovating a house to try to have the best renovation to win money. So the couple that you're closest to is this couple named Holly and Robert. They are also getting married really suddenly as the show is going on. And it seems a little bit PR-y, like a little bit like it's a PR stunt that they're trying to make their story more compelling because their competitors have really heartwarming, compelling stories and good causes that they're working for. So it kind of seems like this is just a little bit of a setup. But they also have this assistant who is working for them named Erica, and she's from this small town that they're working in. And Erica's mother is like the town notary. I don't know. She just like works in the town. So in the story, you get Erica and her mother's perspective. As Holly and Baron are deciding to get married, Erica, their assistant, is helping arrange it all. After the wedding happens, the couple, Holly and Robert, both go missing. And Erica seems really suspicious just because of the way things are going on. Erica's mother even doesn't know whether Erica was involved or not. And then you also get excerpts that are like journal entries, blog posts that Holly and Robert were doing for their show. So the whole mystery is what happened to the couple? How is Erica involved, if at all? And it was just kind of weird because if you hear the premise of the book, it seems so strange that Erica and her mother are the POVs that you're getting predominantly in the book. Like those seem to be not the most interesting characters to follow in the story. And I ultimately decided DNF because I just could not vibe with the writing style of it. I just did not like it, but if the story sounds interesting to you, then still give it a chance if you're interested in it, but this one was unfortunately not for me. Next up, coming out on April 4th, is Dirty Laundry by Disha Bose. This is a twisty domestic suspense debut about a clique of mothers that shatters when one of their own is murdered, bringing chaos to their curated lives. You're following Sierra Dunphy, who is a woman who has it all: a loving husband, well-behaved children, and a beautiful home. Her circle of friends in their small Irish village go to her for tips about mothering, style, and influencer success. A picture-perfect life is easy money on Instagram, but behind the filters, reality is less polished. Enter Mishti Guha, Sierra's best friend. Sierra welcomes Mishti into her inner circle for being unlike the other mothers in the group. and the son just disappeared. But discontent in a marriage arranged for her through her parents back in Calcutta, Mishti now raises her young daughter in a country that is too cold among the children of her new friends who look nothing like her. She just wants what Sierra has, the ease with which she moves through the world, and in that sense, Mishti might be exactly like the other mothers. Then there's another woman, Earth Mother Lauren Doyle, who finds an unlikely ally in Mishti. Then Sierra is found murdered in her own pristine home. Everyone seems to have something to gain from Sierra's death, so if they don't want the blame, it may be the perfect time to air their enemies' dirty laundry. This is mainly categorized as a mystery before thriller, which is interesting to me because sounds kind of like a thriller, but I guess it's murder mystery. Someone ends up murdered and you're trying to piece together what happened, but it sounds like a fun neighborhood drama with some social commentary in it as well about class and privilege and race, and it just sounds like a good time. Next up is a bit of a weird one. It's Ascension by Nicholas Binge, and it's said to come out on April 25th. This is a book that is mainly categorized as science fiction, then horror, fiction, thriller, mystery, mystery thriller, and its main blurb says that it is a mind-bending speculative thriller. It sounds really weird, and I'm not really sure what kind of a story to expect to get out of it, but it also really piques my interest. It's a story where there is this sudden appearance of a mountain in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which leads a group of scientists to a series of jaw-dropping revelations that challenge the notion of what it means to be human. After this mountain appears in the Pacific Ocean, Harold Tunmore, a scientist of mysterious phenomena, is contacted by a shadowy organization to help investigate. He has no idea what he's getting into as he and his team set out for the mountain. The higher that they ascend, the less things make sense. Time moves differently, turning minutes into hours and hours into days. Amid the whipping cold of higher elevation, the climbers' limbs numb and memories of their lives before the mountain begin to fade. Paranoia quickly turns to violence among the crew, and slithering ancient creatures pursue them in the snow. Still, as the dangers increase, the mystery of the mountain compels them to its peak, where they are certain they will find their answers. Have they stumbled upon the greatest scientific discovery known to man, or the seeds of their own demise? Next up is The Eden Test by Adam Sternberg, which is coming out on April 25th. I have never read from this author before or heard of this author before, but this book is said to be good for fans of The Perfect Marriage and Rock, Paper, Scissors. I was a fan of Rock, Paper, Scissors. I was not the biggest fan of The Perfect Marriage, but I did think it was a fun, fast story to read anyways, so this sounds like it'll be the type of story I'm interested in at least, and hopefully it'll have a good payoff in the end. It's about a couple who are forced to the ultimate extremes to save their marriage and themselves. Daisy and Craig's marriage is in serious trouble. That's why Daisy has signed up for the Eden Test, a week-long getaway for couples in need of a fresh start. Yet, even as she's struggling to salvage her marriage, it seems Craig has plans to leave her for another woman. In fact, his bags are already packed long before he arrives to meet Daisy in this remote cabin in the woods of upstate New York. At first, their week away is marked by solitude, connection, and natural beauty, and only a few hostile locals. But what Greg doesn't know is that Daisy, a slyly talented actress, has her own secrets, including a burner phone she's been using for mysterious texts. Not to mention the Eden Test itself, which poses a searing new question to the couple every day, each more explosive than the last. Their marriage was never perfect, but now the lies and revelations are piling up. As the week becomes much more than they bargained for, how far are they willing to go? Now going into books that are coming out in May. The first one is Graveyard of Lost Children by Katrina Monroe. I have not read from Katrina Monroe yet, but I do have a book of hers on my shelves that I need to read. And this book is coming out on May 9th. This is said to be a horror book, and the other labels include fiction, thriller, LGBT, queer, lesbian, so it sounds like it's a queer horror book. The comp titles for this are two books that I have not read, and they are Baby Teeth and The Invited. It says it's a haunting story of the sometimes fragile connection between a woman's sense of self and what it means to be a good mother. At 4 months old, Olivia Dahl was almost murdered. Driven by haunting visions, her mother became obsessed with the idea that Olivia was a changeling and that the only way to get her real baby back was to make a trade with the dead woman living at the bottom of the well. Now Olivia is ready to give birth to a daughter of her own, and for the first time, she hears the women whispering. Everyone tells Olivia she should be happy, she should be glowing, but the birth of her daughter only fills Olivia with dread. As Olivia's body starts giving out, slowly deteriorating as the baby eats and eats and eats, she begins to fear that the baby isn't her daughter at all, and despite her best efforts, history is repeating itself. Soon, images of black-haired women plague Olivia's nightmares, drawing her back to the well that almost claimed her life, tying mother and daughter together in a desperate cycle of fear and violence that must be broken if Olivia has any hope of saving her child or herself. This sounds like it's going to touch on so many themes that I really enjoy reading about, like mother-daughter relationships, generational trauma. I'm interested where the queer representation is going to come into the story because nothing in the synopsis seems to indicate that being a part of the story, but I will take Goodreads label's word for it if it is being shelved in that way. I think I'm probably going to try to read the first book that I have from Katrina Monroe before going to this one, but hopefully I enjoy it because this one sounds really interesting to me. Speaking of authors who I have a book of theirs on my shelf that I haven't read yet, but I'm already interested in another book from them, we have Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I do have Babel on my shelves, or Babel, whichever way you want to say it, but I haven't read it yet, but I do want to. This is mainly shelved as a fiction book, but it is also shelved as mystery and thriller, so there is some kind of mystery element to the story as well. And this is compared to White Ivy, which I have not read, and The Other Black Girl, which I did read and enjoy. You're following authors June Hayward and Athena Liu, who were supposed to be twin rising stars. Same year at Yale, same debut year in publishing. But Athena's a cross-genre literary darling, and June didn't even get a paperback release. Nobody wants stories about basic white girls, June thinks. So when June witnesses Athena's death in a freak accident, she acts on impulse. She steals Athena's just-finished masterpiece, an experimental novel about the unsung contributions of Chinese laborers to the British and French war efforts during World War I. So what if June edits Athena's novel and sends it to her agent as her own work? So what if she lets her new publisher rebrand her as Juniper Song, complete with an ambiguously ethnic author photo? Doesn't this piece of history deserve to be told, whoever the teller? That's what June claims, and the New York Times bestseller list seems to agree. But June can't get away from Athena's shadow, and emerging evidence threatens to bring June's stolen success down around her. As June races to protect her secret, she discovers exactly how far she will go to keep what she thinks she deserves. This sounds so good. I really, really want to read this. It's also only 350 pages, and the reason that I put off reading Babel is because that book is really long. So I could see myself getting to this one before that one because it's just easier to pick up a 350 page book than it is for a, I don't know, 500-600 page book. That one is a long one. But I've heard great things about this author, and this sounds like such a compelling story, and we'll see which one I get to first. Next up is The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Khaw, which is coming out on May 1st. And I have an unpopular opinion here because I actually did enjoy the last book that I read from Cassandra Khaw, which was Nothing But Blackened Teeth. A lot of people did not enjoy that one. I had fun with it. This is another short novella from Cassandra Khaw. It's 112 pages, and it's a horror book with fantasy elements, and I am excited for it. This is a bewitching fairy tale of discovering the darkness in the world and the darkness within oneself. You may think you know how the fairy tale goes. A mermaid comes to shore and weds the prince. But what the fables forget is that mermaids have teeth, and now her daughters have devoured the kingdom and burned it to ashes. On the run, the mermaid is joined by a mysterious plague doctor with a darkness of their own. Deep in the eerie snow-crusted forest, the pair stumble upon a village of ageless children who thirst for blood and the three saints who control them. The mermaid and her doctor must embrace the cruelest parts of their true nature if they hope to survive. It does sound quite fantasy-ish, and I'm hoping it won't be too heavy on the fantasy for me to not enjoy it since it's only a little over 100 pages. That is like my favorite bite-sized amount of fantasy that I can spend a lot of time enjoying. But yeah, the cover looks really cool for this one. I've enjoyed Cassandra Khaw's writing before, and I'm looking forward to it. Next up is Four Found Dead by Natalie D. Richards, which is coming out on May 23rd, and this is a young adult mystery thriller. Tonight, Tempest Theaters is closing forever, the last remaining business in a defunct shopping mall. The moviegoers have left, and Jo and her 6 coworkers have the final shift, cleaning up popcorn and mopping the floors for the last time. But after an unexpected altercation location puts everyone on edge, the power goes out. Their manager disappears along with the keys to the lobby doors and the theater safe, where the crew's phones are locked each shift. Then the crew's tension turns to terror when Jo discovers the dead body of one of her co-workers. Now their only chance to escape the murderer in their midst is through the dark, shuttered mall. With its boarded up exits and disabled fire alarms, the complex is filled with hiding places for both pursuer and pursued. In order to survive the night, Jo and her friends must trust one another, navigate the sprawling ruins of the mall, and outwit a killer before he kills again. Doesn't that just sound so fun? The setting sounds fun, the plot sounds fun, it just looks fun. Next up, coming out on May 16th, we have All the Dead Lie Down by Kyrie McCauley. This one is said to be The Haunting of Bly Manor meets House of Salt and Sorrows. I haven't read House of Salt and Sorrows, but I did really enjoy The Haunting of Bly Manor. This one is a YA gothic horror with queer elements in it as well. Days after a tragedy leaves Marin Blythe alone in the world, she receives a surprising invitation from Alice Lovelace, an acclaimed horror writer and childhood friend of Marin's mother. Alice offers her a nanny position at Lovelace House, the family's coastal Maine estate. Marin accepts and soon finds herself minding Alice's peculiar girls. Thea buries her dolls one by one, hosting a series of funerals, while Wren does everything in her power to drive Marin away. Then Alice's eldest daughter returns home unexpectedly. Evie Hallowell is every bit as strange as her younger sisters, and yet Marin is quickly drawn in by Evie's compelling behavior and ethereal grace. But as Marin settles in, she can't escape the anxiety that follows her like a shadow. Dead birds appear in Marin's room, the children's pranks escalate, something dangerous lurks in the woods, leaving mutilated animals in its wake. All is not well at Lovelace House, and Marin must unravel its secrets before they consume her. And next up, coming out on May 23rd, is The Chateau by Jacqueline Goldis. This one's said to be good for fans of Lucy Foley, Ruth Ware, and Lisa Jewell, all of which I have enjoyed books from before, so it sounds like a good fit for me. Welcome to picturesque Provence, where the lady of the chateau, Seraphine Dermagalassi, what a name, has opened its elegant doors to her granddaughter Darcy and 3 friends. 20 years earlier, the 4 girlfriends studied abroad together in France and visited the old woman on the weekends, creating the group's deep bond. But why this sudden invitation? Amid winery tours, market visits, and fancy dinners overlooking olive groves and lavender fields, it becomes clear that each woman has a hidden reason for accepting the invitation. Then, after a wild evening celebration, Seraphine is found brutally murdered. As the women search for answers to this shocking crime, fingers begin pointing and a sinister Instagram account pops up, exposing snapshots from the friends' intimate moments at the chateau while threatening to reveal more. As they race to uncover who murdered Seraphine and is now stalking them, they learn the chateau houses many secrets, several worth killing for. I do have an arc of this one, so I'm hoping to read it in April so I can tell you about it before it comes out in May, but it sounds really fun. I love the cover. It looks like it's gonna be atmospheric, lots of secrets, hidden motives. It's all my buzzwords. It sounds like a really good time. Next up, coming out on June 13th, is The Drowning Woman by Robin Harding. This is a mystery thriller book, and Robin Harding's books, from what I've read so far, tend to be fun, fast-paced, nothing incredibly mind-blowing, but a good time nonetheless. So that's kind of what I'm expecting from something like this, but who knows, maybe it'll surprise me and be a little bit different. You're following Lee Gulliver, who never thought she'd find herself living on the streets, but when her restaurant falls and she falls deeper into debt, she leaves her old life behind with nothing but her clothes and her Toyota Corolla. In Seattle, she parks in a secluded spot by the beach to lay low and plan her next move, until early one morning she sees a sobbing woman throw herself into the ocean. Lee hauls the woman back to the surface, but instead of appreciation, she is met with fury. The drowning woman, Hazel, tells her that she wanted to die, that she's trapped in a toxic, abusive marriage, that she's a prisoner in her own home. Lee has thwarted her one chance to escape her life. Out of options, Hazel retreats to her gilded cage, and Lee thinks she's seen the last of her, until her unexpected return the next morning. Bonded by disparate but difficult circumstances, the women soon strike up a close and unlikely friendship. And then one day, Hazel makes a shocking request. She wants Lee to help her disappear. It'll be easy, Hazel assures her, but Lee soon learns that nothing is as easy as it seems, and that Hazel may not be the friend Lee thought that she was. See, doesn't that kind of sound like a book you've read before? It sounds like a couple books that I've read before. It reminds me of The Last Flight by Julie Clark, or Not So Perfect Strangers by L.S. Stratton. So I'm not expecting anything overly original here, but they're usually pretty fun to read. Next up is Where Echoes Die by Courtney Gould, which is coming out on June 20th. and this is an author that I have read from before, and I really enjoyed the previous book that I read from them, The Dead in the Dark. So I'm really looking forward to this one. It is a young adult horror book that is also labeled as queer. You're following Beck Bershing, who has been adrift since the death of her mother, a brilliant but troubled investigative reporter. She finds herself unable to stop herself from slipping into memories of happier days, clamoring for a time when things were normal. So when a mysterious letter in her mother's handwriting arrives in the mail with the words "Come and find me," pointing to a town called Backravel, Beck hopes that it may hold the answers. But when Beck and her sister Riley arrive, it's clear that there's something off about the town. There are no cars, no cemeteries, no churches, any other things that they don't have that start with the letter C. It's a very odd list. The town is a mix of dilapidated military structures and new shiny buildings, all overseen by the town's gleaming treatment center high on a plateau. No one seems to remember when they got there, and the only people who seem to know more than they're letting on is the town's enigmatic leader and his daughter Avery. As the sisters search for answers about their mother, Beck and Avery become more drawn together, and their unexpected connection brings up emotions Beck has buried since her mother's death. Beck is desperate to hold on to the way things used to be, and when she starts losing herself in Backravel and its connection to her mother, will there be a way for Beck to pull herself out? It says this is a story that explores grief, the weight of not letting go of the past, first love, and the bonds between sisters, mothers, and daughters. Next up, coming out on June 6th, is Ride or Die by Gail Agnes Musakavanhu. This is a young adult contemporary mystery thriller with romance in it as well. Lots of labels on this one. And it is an adrenaline-packed joyride of a debut that is an ode to Gen Z and teens who love chaos. Perfect for fans of Grace D. Lee, Ebony Liddell, and Baby Driver. None of which I am familiar with, but the synopsis still sounds interesting to me. You're following best friends Lolly Crawford and Ryan Pope, who have earned their nickname the Bonnie and Clyde of Woolridge High. From illegal snack swapping in kindergarten to reckless car surfing in high school, they have been causing trouble in their uptight California town forever. Everyone knows that the mischief starts with Lolly. When it comes to chasing thrills, drama, and adventure, no one is on her level. At least until Lolly throws the wildest party Woolridge Hill has ever seen just to steal a necklace and meets X, a strange, unidentified boy in a coat closet who challenges her to a game she can't refuse. One that promises to put her love of danger to the ultimate test. Lolly and X begin an anonymous correspondence, exchanging increasingly risky missions. Lolly's fun has always been free and easy, but things spin out of control as she attempts to one-up X's every move. As Lolly risks losing everything, including her oldest friend, she'll face the most dangerous thing of all, falling for someone she shouldn't. I just love a good YA that has these crazy high school parties and just doing ridiculous things. I watch so many TV shows that are like this, and it's really funny because my partner has this running joke where he'll walk in a room and just see the most ridiculous high school party happening on the screen, and he's always like, parties aren't like that in high school. And I don't know, maybe they are nowadays, but it is very funny because that was certainly not my high school experience, and these stories always like to have these really outrageous things going on with these mansion houses in California. But it's really fun to, dream about and pretend. They're fun escapist stories. Next up, coming out on June 6th, is Maeve Fly by C.J. Lead. This is a horror book that has a crazy cover and a crazy synopsis. By day, Maeve Fly works at the happiest place in the world as every child's favorite ice princess. By the neon night glow of the Sunset Strip, Maeve haunts the dive bars with a drink in one hand and a book in the other, imitating her misanthropic literary heroes. But when Gideon Green, her best friend's brother, moves to town, he awakens something dangerous within her, and the world she knows suddenly shifts beneath her feet. Untethered, Maeve ditches her discontented act and tries on a new persona, a bolder, bloodier one, inspired by the pages of American Psycho. Step aside, Patrick Bateman, it's Maeve's turn with the knife. I don't know, sounds fun. Next up, of course, I'm not gonna leave out Miss Ruth Ware, who has a new book coming out June 20th called 0 Days. I know people have mixed feelings about Ruth Ware. I still enjoy reading all of her books. Even if some of them are not the most amazing or fun, I still like to pick up what she's writing. In this thriller story, you are following Jack and her husband Gabe, who are hired by companies to break into buildings and hack security systems. They are the best penetration specialists in the building. But after a routine assignment goes horribly wrong, Jack arrives home to find her husband dead. To add to her horror, the police are closing in on their suspect, her. Suddenly on the run and quickly running out of options, Jack must decide who she can trust as she circles closer to the real killer in this unputdownable and heart-pounding mystery from an author whose propulsive prose keeps readers on the hook and refuses to let anyone off until all has been revealed, according to Shelf Awareness. What is worrisome about what I'm looking at right now is I do not see a page count. Oh, there we go. Okay, 368 pages. Still pretty long. That was my issue with her most recent book. I thought it was too long. This might also be another long one, but we're still gonna give it a try because it's Ruth Ware, you know, you gotta keep reading them. Next up, from the author of Tender is the Flesh, we have 19 Claws and a Blackbird, which is a short story collection that is coming out on June 20th. This was already out, I believe, in Argentina and is being translated into English now, so that is what is coming out now. It is a collection of 19 dark, wildly imaginative short stories. Through stories about violence, alienation, and dystopia, Bastrica's vision of the human experience emerges in complex, unexpected ways, often unsettling, sometimes thrilling, and always profound. In Roberto, a girl claims to have a rabbit between her legs. A woman's neighbor jumps to his death in A Light, Swift, and Monstrous Sound. And in Candy Pink, a woman fails to contend with a difficult breakup in 5 Easy Steps. Written in Bastrica's signature, clever, vivid style, these stories question love, friendship, family relationships, and unspeakable desires. The thing that surprises me about this is it is said to be 19 short stories, but the length also says that it is only 176 pages. So I expect that these are going to be extremely short stories, which is very interesting to me, but I don't know. I don't always pick up short story collections, but because this is an author that I've read from before, I will definitely be picking this one up. Next up, coming out on June 6th, is Everything the Darkness Eats by Eric LaRocca. This says that it is 202 pages, so a little bit longer for Eric LaRocca's typical writing. And of course, like all of this author's stories, this is a queer horror story. An insidious darkness threatens to devastate a rural New England village when occult forces are conjured and when bigotry is left unrestrained. After a recent string of disappearances in a small Connecticut town, a grieving widower with a grim secret is drawn into a dangerous ritual of dark magic by a powerful and mysterious older gentleman named Hart Crowley. Meanwhile, a member of local law enforcement tasked with uncovering the culprit responsible for the bizarre disappearances soon begins to learn of a current of unbridled hatred simmering beneath the guise of the town's idyllic community. A hatred that will eventually burst and forever change the lives of those who once found peace in the quiet town of Henley's Edge. You know, when I was first looking at the synopsis, I was thinking, wow, this is actually a longer synopsis for Eric LaRocca. Usually the synopses for these books are very vague, like one-liners, weird things. They don't really tell you what the story's about. And even though this has more words in it, I still don't feel like I have that good of an understanding of what the story is going to be, but I pick up everything from this author, so I'm gonna be picking this one up too. This next book is categorized as historical fiction, but it's also said to be gothic. So it kind of fits in what we're talking about. It's coming out on June 13th and it's called Madalena and the Dark by Julia Fine. And the comp titles for this are The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue and Mexican Gothic. So like, I'm gonna be picking it up. I've actually read from this author before. I read The Upstairs House, I think, from Julia Fine, and it was kind of weird. I didn't really love it at the time, but this one sounds like something that will be really up my alley, so I definitely want to pick it up. The story is set in Venice in the year 1717. You're following a 15-year-old named Louisa who has only wanted one thing: to be the best at violin. As a student at this academy, whose name I will not be able to pronounce very well, she hopes to join the highest ranks of its illustrious girls' orchestra and become a protege of the great Antonio Vivaldi. Louisa is good at violin, but she's not the best. She has peers, but she does not have friends. Until Madalena. After a scandal threatens her noble family's reputation, Madalena is sent to this academy to preserve her marriage prospects. When she meets Louisa, Madalena feels the stirrings of a friendship unlike anything she has known. But Madalena has a secret. She has hatched a dangerous plot to rescue her future her own way. When she invites Louisa into her plans, promising to make her dreams come true, Louisa doesn't hesitate. But every wager has its price, and as the girls are drawn into the decadent world outside the academy's walls, they must decide what it is they truly want want and what they will do to pay for it. So this sounds like they're going to be making some deals with the devil to reach fortune and fame, which is always a great story to read. This reminds me a lot of a movie I watched not too long ago, whose name I cannot remember, but I will put the poster up here on the screen. And that was a very good, interesting movie. So this one has definitely piqued my attention and I'm excited for it to come out. Next up, coming out on June 20th is The Spare Room by Andrea Bartz. Haven't read from Andrea Bartz before, but loved a book from her sister earlier this year, and I have heard a lot about Andrea Bartz, so maybe this will be the first one I pick up. Kelly's new life in Philadelphia has turned into a nightmare. She's friendless and jobless, and the lockdown has her trapped in a tiny apartment with a man she gave up everything for, who's just called off their wedding. The only bright spot is her newly rekindled friendship with her childhood friend Sabrina, now a glamorous best-selling author with a handsome, high-powered husband. When Sabrina and Nathan offer Kelly an escape hatch, volunteering the spare room of their remote Virginia mansion, she jumps at the chance to run away from her old life. There, Kelly secretly finds herself falling for both her enchanting hosts, until one night, a wild and unexpected threesome leads the couple to open their marriage for her. That's not where I thought this was going. At first, Kelly loves being part of this risque new world, but when she discovers that the last woman they invited into their marriage is missing, she starts to wonder if they could be dangerous and if she might be next. I think I have an arc of this, and I'm gonna be reading that soon. What are the Bartz sisters doing? What are they up to? What does their background look like? What do they do in their spare time? Because wow, this feels like the vibes of what we got from Julia Bartz in the writing retreat. Can you imagine what if in my top 10 books at the end of the year is like both of the Bartz sisters make it into my top 10 books? Wow, I wanna read that like right now. Yeah, this is definitely the first book I'm gonna be reading from Andrea Bartz because that sounds so good. The last book I have to tell you about is coming out on June 20th, and it is called You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight by Callan Bayron. It's a YA horror book that is also labeled as queer, and it says it's perfect for fans of Fear Street. I did not read those books, but I did watch the movies and I did like them. This is set at Camp Mirror Lake. Terror is the name of the game, but can you survive the night? Charity Curtis has the summer job of her dreams, playing the final girl at Camp Mirror Lake. Guests pay to be scared in this full contact terror game. I would never. As Charity and her summer crew recreate scenes from a classic slasher film, Curse of Camp Mirror Lake. The more realistic the fear, the better for business. But the last weekend of the season, Charity's coworkers begin disappearing, and when one ends up dead, Charity's role as the final girl suddenly becomes all too real. If Charity and her girlfriend Bezzy hope to survive the night, they'll need to figure out what this killer is after. Is there more to the story of Mirror Lake and its dangerous past than Charity ever suspected? Probably. So that's it for all of the mystery, thriller, suspense, horror, slightly fantasy, slightly sci-fi mix of books that I am most interested in that are coming out this spring. Let me know in the comments below which books you're most excited for this spring, whether they were on my list or if there's something new that I didn't mention. Definitely let me know so I can add it to my radar as well. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!